Corporal Marin Reyes shivered despite the warm night air. The desert wind whispered against the canvas of his tent, carrying tiny grains of sand that tickled his skin. He lay on his cot, staring at the small lantern swinging gently overhead. Exhaustion weighed on him after another long patrol, but sleep remained just out of reach. A soft ripple in the tent wall caught his eye. Marin sat up, heart pounding. He reached for his rifle, every muscle tense. The fabric quivered again, and he held his breath. Then, with hardly a sound, the canvas parted. At first, Marin saw only darkness. Then, a slender form glided inside, framed by the pale moonlight. The visitor moved quietly, like a shadow made of living silk. Marin's hand shook on the rifle as he woke fully. He blinked twice, wondering if exhaustion had twisted his senses. But there she was, the alien queen. Her tall, graceful body stood nearly 7 feet high, with 4 slender arms folded across her chest. Bioluminescent lines traced intricate patterns along her exoskeleton, glowing softly in the tent's dim light. Her 4 eyes regarded Marin without malice or triumph, only a calm, ancient wisdom. Marin pressed his back against the tent's support pole. "Who are you?" he whispered, voice hoarse. He tried to sound steady, but his muscles trembled. The queen tilted her head, those glowing eyes moving slowly from his rifle to his face. She made no sound, yet Marin felt a gentle voice in his mind, clear as a bell. "Do not fear." He swallowed hard. The rifle felt heavy in his hands. He lowered it halfway, but did not drop his guard. "I mean no harm." The queen's thought drifted into his mind. "I only seek a moment of peace." Marin's throat tightened. All his training screamed at him to capture or kill this creature, the leader of a race that had waged war against humanity. Yet he could not bring himself to act. The queen's presence was not threatening. Instead, she seemed tired. A desert gust rocked the tent, and the lantern wavered. Shadows danced across the queen's glowing markings. Marin realized she had taken a single step forward, her arms still folded. He saw a faint pulse in her chest, where her forelimbs met, like a heartbeat beneath her armored shell. "I come in secret," she conveyed. "My world lies in ruin. I wish only to speak with one human, one soldier, who might carry my plea beyond these dunes." Marin's mind raced. He glanced at the small opening in the tent wall. Guards patrolled just meters away. Detection would mean her death, and likely his. But if he helped her communicate, perhaps more lives could be saved. He steadied his breathing. Lowering his rifle all the way, he whispered, "Speak, then." The queen inclined her head, a soft hum escaping her like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. In that moment, under the banner of conflict and fear, 2 beings reached across a chasm of stars to find a fragile spark of understanding. Corporal Marin Reyes blinked as the gentle hum faded into silence. The alien queen stood motionless before him, her glowing lines pulsing softly like a slow, steady heartbeat. Outside the tent, the desert night remained still, as if it too listened to the moment. Marin swallowed. What do you want?" he asked, keeping his voice low. His throat felt dry, but he forced himself to speak clearly. The queen's 4 eyes narrowed in understanding. In Marin's mind came a warm, resonant tone. "I seek truth and mercy." It was not a voice made of words, but of feelings and images. Marin felt a rush of memories that were not his own. Lush forests under twin suns, cities built on crystal shores. And then the horror of flames, the shattering of buildings, and the mournful cries of her people as they fell. He staggered back, pressing his hand to his chest. The scenes burned in his mind. Bright towers crumbling, rivers choked with ash, wounded creatures lying silent. He gasped and fell onto his cot, heart pounding. Above him, the queen lowered her head in sorrow. "We were proud and wise once," she conveyed. "But our world was taken by storms we could not tame. Our leaders fought among themselves while the skies turned black. We died by the billions." Her pulsing lines dimmed, and Marin felt her grief wash over him like a cold tide. He closed his eyes, fighting the urge to flee. Instead, he let the pain sink in. He had seen dead civilians during patrols, but this was different. These memories were intimate, personal. A mother's last lullaby, children's laughter before it stopped forever. Marin felt tears prick his eyes. "I came to beg for help," the Queen's thought continued gently. "Humanity has power. You can speak for us before the Council." She showed him visions of the Galactic Council's Grand Hall. Towering marble columns, robed delegates from countless worlds. She reached out a slender arm, and Marin felt a touch that was colder than ice, but kinder than any human hand. Marin's fear turned to determination. He stood and faced her. "I will help you," he whispered. "I will carry your plea." A soft glow ran through the Queen's markings, brighter this time. "You are brave and good, Corporal Rice." She paused. "But time is short. Soon, my pursuers will learn I am here. You must act before dawn." He nodded. "I understand." Marin looked toward the tent entrance, where guard voices drifted in. His mind raced. How to get her message out. How to convince his superiors. Already, snippets of thought formed. A coded transmission. A disguised helper in the base's comm center. The Queen inclined her head, a gesture heavy with relief. "Speak when you are ready. I will wait." She folded her arms and stepped back, melting into the shadows of the tent's far corner. Only the faint glow of her lines marked her presence now. Marin watched her for a long moment, his resolve hardening. The night wind rattled the tent poles. Outside, the world slept under a silent sky. Inside, two allies prepared to change the fate of a species. And though they came from distant stars, they shared a single hope: that one soldier's courage could bridge an unthinkable divide. Corporal Marin Rice lay awake long before dawn. His mind buzzed with the Queen's plea. The lantern at his bedside cast a soft glow over the tent. Outside, the desert air was cool and still. He dressed quickly, careful not to wake the Queen hidden in the shadows. He packed a small pouch with ink, paper, and a tiny recorder. Then he slipped out, closing the tent flap behind him. Down the sandy path, he found Sergeant Lena Lee at the command tent. She stood before a holomat, frowning at shifting patrol routes. When she saw him, her eyes narrowed. "Marin," she said softly, "you're up early. Everything all right?" He swallowed. "Sergeant, I need your help. It's urgent." Lee studied him. "You look like you've seen a ghost. What happened?" He glanced around. No one else was near. "There's something you should know. About last night." She crossed her arms. "Last night I was on watch. You left on your own. Explain." Marin took a deep breath. "I met someone. Something. The Alien Queen." Her laugh was short and sharp. "The Alien Queen? Don't joke, Rice." He met her gaze. "I'm serious. She came into my tent. She wants peace. She's not here to fight." Lee's face hardened. "And you believe this because—" Marin pulled out the recorder. He pressed play. A soft, warbling hum filled the air. Lee frowned. "What is that?" Her voice. "It's in my mind, but this recorder picked up the hum." He handed it to her. Lee held it carefully, listening to the otherworldly tone. Marin spoke while the hum played. "She showed me images. Her world died. They need our help to speak before the Galactic Council." Lee shook her head. "This is insane. We're at war with her kind. You think Command will listen to some alien fairy tale?" He pointed to the recorder. "Listen closely." The hum grew louder for a moment, then faded. "That was her saying she trusted me. I felt it." Lee stared at the device, then back at him. Her jaw clenched. "If this is a trick, Rise, you'll answer to me." Marin held her eyes. "I know the risk, but she showed me real memories. Children's games, crystal forests, then fire and death. It wasn't war footage, it was her life." Lee exhaled slowly. The sand shifted under their boots. She seemed to weigh her orders against his words. Finally, she said, "All right, I'll give you 15 minutes in the comm tent. But if you're wrong, I'll report you." "Understood." He nodded, relief flooding him. "Understood. Thank you." She led him toward the comm tent as the sky lightened. Merrin glanced back at the dark ridge where his tent stood. The Queen waited there alone. He steeled himself. Soon, her fate, and perhaps the fate of both their peoples, would rest on words spoken in secret. The first rays of sun crept over the dunes. In their gold light, two soldiers, one human and one alien, stood on the edge of a fragile alliance, and Corporal Reyes held a single chance to prove that compassion could overcome fear. Corporal Merrin Reyes tipped into the dimly lit comm tent beside Sergeant Lena Lee. Rows of consoles glowed with soft green and blue lights. Technicians hunched over keyboards, sending and receiving routine messages. Merrin's heart pounded. Lee spoke quietly. "You have exactly 10 minutes. Then we leave." She pointed to an empty terminal at the far end. "Use that one. I'll watch the door." Merrin nodded. He moved swiftly to the console and lowered himself onto the metal stool. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. In his pouch, the small recorder hummed faintly in its soft cloth wrap. He took a breath and began. First, he typed a normal status report. "All clear on Sector 7. Supplies loaded." That would cover his real mission. Then, with a trembling hand, he inserted the recorder's data into the machine's input port. A progress bar flickered, transferring audio data. Lee leaned against the wall, eyes scanning the tent's entrance. Merrin watched the bar inch forward. Halfway there, an alert beep sounded from another console. "What is that?" Lee whispered, tensing. Merrin glanced at the screen. A red light blinked. Incoming priority message from Base Command. The technician nearest them froze, then tapped the keys. A stern voice crackled through the speakers. "Lieutenant Vargas to all units. Prepare for inspection." Lee swore under her breath. "They're coming here." Merrin's stomach twisted. The transfer was only 60% complete. If the technicians saw the recorder, everything would end badly. For both him and the Queen. He swallowed hard. "Keep them occupied," he said to Lee. She straightened and stepped to the door. "Listen up," she called. "Command inspection now." She slammed her fist on the tent's support beam. Technicians glanced up and murmured. Lee barked orders. "Everyone, stand by your stations. We have an inspection. Move." The technicians hurried to compliance, blocking the entrance and asking Lee questions. Merrin seized the moment. With lightning speed, he opened a new data window and began converting the audio into a coded text file. His training in encryption took over. He replaced letters with number sequences, hiding the Queen's message in plain sight. 40 seconds, he murmured to himself. His fingers flew. Lee returned, guiding the inspectors out with calm authority. "Everything is secure," she assured them. "Continue your work. No further action needed." Once the tent fell silent again, she gave Merrin a quick nod. He checked the transfer, 80%. He bit his lip and held still as the seconds ticked. At last, the bar reached 100. A confirmation beep sounded. Merrin exhaled, feeling weight lift from his chest. He ejected the data stick and slipped it into his pouch. Then he erased the console log of the transfer and restored the normal status report. Lee clapped him on the shoulder. "Good work. Let's go." Merrin followed her out into the brightening morning light. The sun had fully risen now, turning the desert into a sea of gold. He glanced back at the comm tent, where his secret waited to be sent beyond the war and fear. Together, they hurried toward the ridge where the alien Queen remained hidden. Merrin's resolve burned hotter than the desert sun. He had done what he came to do. Now, the next step would be to ensure the hidden plea reached ears that would listen. And with luck, an ally in high command might yet choose mercy over destruction. Corporal Marin Reyes and Sergeant Lena Lee crept across the ridge toward the battered communications tower. The steel skeleton rose 10 meters above the dunes, its cables humming faintly in the breeze. Below, shifting shadows of patrolling troops moved like restless ghosts. Marin tightened his grip on his pouch, where the coded data stick pressed against his side. Lee pointed to a side hatch just above the tower's base. "That panel is unguarded," she whispered. "We can slip inside and reach the main transmitter." The two soldiers exchanged a determined glance and moved fast, feet sinking into the warm sand. Marin pried open the hatch, and they ducked into a narrow ladder shaft. Rusty metal grated under their boots as they climbed. Every rung echoed in the empty shaft, but the morning sun above was their beacon. Lee reached the top first, peered through a grated window, then signaled all clear. Inside the transmitter room, rows of blinking consoles glowed in steady rhythm. A single technician, a corporal barely older than Marin, stood at the main panel, reviewing outbound logs. Marin swallowed and approached him, Lee at his shoulder. The technician glanced up, suspicion flickering in his eyes. "Corporal Reyes," the technician said with surprise. "You're not scheduled for maintenance here." His voice was polite but cautious. Marin forced calm. "Sir, I have a priority uplink for base command." Orders came directly from Lieutenant Vargas. He offered the pouch. "Encryption Protocol Alpha 7. The technician hesitated, then took the data stick. Lee watched the door as the technician connected the stick to the console. The screen flickered to life, lines of coded text scrolling rapidly. Outside, the wind rattled the tower's supports, every metal joint a whisper of warning. "Alpha 7 is unusual," the technician muttered, fingers dancing over the keys. "Let me verify." He tapped at a terminal, and a small alarm indicator blinked in the corner of the screen. Marin's heart skipped. "Please hurry," he urged, voice low. Lee shifted, hand near her sidearm. Moments later, the technician's expression shifted from doubt to relief. "It's authenticated," he said quietly. "High Command will route it to Council Liaison." He activated the uplink. A soft chime rang out as the transmitter powered up. Marin closed his eyes briefly. The hum grew in volume until it filled the room, then stilled with a final click. The data had gone. Hidden plea carried in silent waves far above the desert dust. Outside, a patrol wandered too close. Lee tensed, but the hatch remained closed. The corporal stepped back from the console. "You two should leave before anyone notices." He pocketed the empty data stick and offered a small nod of respect. Marin gripped Lee's shoulder. "Thank you," he said. Lee smiled, tight but genuine. Together, they'd retraced their steps down the ladder, careful not to leave a trace of their presence. Back on the ridge, the wind washed over them. The tower's silhouette faded behind. Marin unzipped his pouch and pressed the small crystalline seed into his palm, the Queen's gift. He felt its smooth surface and remembered her words of hope. Lee gave him a sideways look. "Now we wait." Marin nodded, eyes on the horizon. The sun climbed higher, burning the sky, the color of fire. Somewhere beyond the dunes, the Galactic Council would receive a secret message of mercy, and in that moment of quiet triumph, two soldiers held fast to the fragile promise of peace. Corporal Marin Reyes and Sergeant Lena Lee crept back over the dune ridge as the afternoon sun beat down. Marin's boots sank into soft sand, while Lee scanned the horizon for patrols. They carried no weapons in hand, only the small crystalline seed and hope. When they reached the hidden tent, the alien queen waited just inside the flap. Her glowing lines pulsed faster than before, like a heartbeat anxious with news. Marin knelt and showed her the empty data stick. The queen's 4 eyes widened, and she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder in thanks. "Message sent," Marin said softly. "Now we wait for a reply from base command." The queen inclined her head. "I trust in your courage," she conveyed, "but danger stirs." Marin straightened. "Time is short. You should move to a safer place." He thought of the old water cistern nearby, an underground hollow that could hide her. Lee nodded and led the queen away. Merrin lingered to fold the lantern and rifle sling, careful to leave no footprints. Inside the cistern's cool shadow, the queen settled on a ledge above a shallow pool. Her glow dimmed to gentle ripples on the damp walls. Lee and Merrin stood below, voices hushed. "She may stay here until we learn more," Lee said. "It's far from guard routes." The queen's telepathy touched Merrin's mind. "Thank you." He felt relief, but also a whirl of worry. Back at the base tent, Merrin checked his wrist communicator. No new orders. 30 minutes passed. Then an incoming coded burst lit the small screen. Merrin's heart thumped as he opened the message. "Corporal Reyes." The text began in Lieutenant Vargas's formal tone. "Your uplink has been acknowledged by Council Liaison. Further instructions to follow. Stand by." Merrin exhaled. It was enough for now. Proof that the plea reached beyond the war. He showed the message to Lee. She exulted with a rare smile and punched his shoulder. "We did it," she said. "Now we keep this secret until command decides." Merrin nodded. "Right. We protect her until they say what's next." They slipped out again toward the cistern under the cover of a shifting sandstorm on the horizon. The queen waited, her glow steady and hopeful. As they approached, Lee paused. "Listen." A distant hum grew louder, far different from the queen's gentle tone. It was mechanical, many small engines. Merrin's blood ran cold. "Scout drones," he whispered. They must have detected the uplink transmission. The three pressed against the cistern wall as 5 small hovering drones, sleek and silver, swept past the entrance. Their sensors flicked in precise patterns, scanning the desert floor. The queen drew back, fear in her posture. Lee raised a gloved hand. "Stay calm," she murmured to Merrin. He produced a small mirror from his pouch and angled it to catch the storm light. With precision, he flashed the mirror beam across the cistern ceiling, creating a bright flare. The drones whirred, their lights flicking to the cistern entrance. They paused, scanned briefly, then continued their sweep outward as if diverted. Merrin lowered the mirror. "That bought us time," Lee said. She exhaled deeply. "But they'll be back." The queen touched Merrin's arm. "Your people are resourceful." Her glow brightened in gratitude. Merrin met her eyes. "We'll protect you." Together. Above them, the sandstorm rolled in, turning the world to gold dust. Inside the cistern's quiet shadow, an unlikely fellowship braced for the trials yet to come, and trusted that courage, cunning, and compassion might still tip the scales toward peace. Corporal Merrin Reyes crouched beside the alien queen in the cistern's shadow. The sandstorm raged outside, wind howling like wild beasts. Sergeant Lena Lee checked the entrance. The scout drones were gone. For now. Merrin brushed grit from his uniform. "We can't stay here much longer," he said softly. "They'll track our signal again." The queen's bioluminescent lines dimmed to a steady glow. "I understand," she projected. "But where can I go?" Lee stepped forward, voice low. "There's an old service tunnel under the base. It leads toward the western ridge. It's unguarded and away from patrols." She pointed to a rough sketch on Merrin's palm-top map. "If we can get you there, you might slip through to the council convoy route." Merrin traced the path with his finger. "It's risky, but it's our best chance." He looked at the queen. "We move at night, when the storm masks your glow." The queen inclined her head. "I trust you both." That evening, Merrin and Lee led the queen out of the cistern. The storm had slowed to a steady dust haze. Merrin carried a heavy pack with water rations. Lee held a compact assault rifle, set to silent stun. They followed the tunnel entrance, hidden behind an old fuel depot. Rusted metal doors groaned as they opened. Inside, the air was cool and still. Merrin switched on his helmet light. A narrow corridor stretched ahead, its walls lined with corroded pipes. They moved single file. The queen's footsteps were silent, her form fitting just beneath the pipework. Lee watched their backs as they advanced, every shadow a potential threat. Halfway through, a distant clatter echoed. Marin froze. Lee signaled stop, then pressed her ear to the wall. The sound came again. Soldiers on patrol. Marin whispered, "We need to hide." He found a small alcove. All three slipped inside. Marin held his breath as two guards passed by the tunnel mouth, their boots echoing on concrete. The Queen pressed close, her glow dimmest. Lee gripped her rifle, ready to defend. After tense moments, the guards moved on. Once the corridor fell silent, Lee exhaled. That was close. She checked her watch. "We have 20 minutes before next patrol." They hurried onward. The tunnel branched into a wider shaft. Marin consulted the map. Left would lead to old maintenance shafts, right toward the western ridge. He chose right and led the way. After 10 minutes, the tunnel opened onto a rocky ledge overlooking the dunes. Outside, the wind had died. The moon peeked through broken clouds, casting silver light on the sand. Marin helped the Queen through the narrow gap. She paused and turned, touching his shoulder. "Thank you." He nodded. "Stay hidden until the convoy passes. Then meet us at the old landing zone beside the cliff." Lee stepped up beside them. "We'll make sure you're safe." She gave the Queen a firm salute. The Queen returned the gesture with all four arms. As they watched, headlights appeared far in the distance. Two vehicles rolling across the desert toward the base. One carried supplies. The other carried the council liaison and his escort. Marin checked his rifle and radio. "We'll follow them at a distance. Keep your comm channels open." Lee clicked her earpiece. "Roger that." The Queen slipped into a shallow crevice in the cliff, her glow vanishing against the rock. Marin and Lee melted into the shadows below. Together, human and alien would shadow the convoy under the moonlight. They carried hope for two worlds. And they would not fail. Corporal Marin Rice crouched low among the rocks as the convoy's taillights traced a glowing line across the dunes. Sergeant Lena Lee pressed her back against a boulder, eyes narrowed through night vision goggles. Between them, the alien Queen remained hidden in her crevice, her bioluminescent patterns muted to a soft whisper of light. The two vehicles rolled past their hiding place without slowing. The first carried fuel and supplies. The second carried the council liaison, his aides, and an armed escort. Marin checked his watch. They had precisely 20 minutes to shadow the convoy before dawn's patrols resumed. Lee tapped her wrist radio. "All clear," she whispered. "Moving out." Marin led the way down the slope, careful to keep silent. The Queen followed, her slender limbs folding and unfolding with grace. Every footstep was measured, every breath controlled. They skirted the convoy by staying in its dust shadow, 10 meters off the road. At one point, a single scout jeep veered off to inspect a strange heat signature. Its headlights swept past them in a slow arc. Lee froze. Marin pressed a hand to her arm. The jeep's sensors whined, then passed on. Lee let out a quiet sigh. "Suit up," Marin said, pulling small cloaking shrouds from his pack. "These will help hide our heat." He handed one to Lee and another to the Queen. A soft, metallic fabric that wrapped around her exoskeleton and dampened her warmth. Once cloaked, their forms flickered nearly invisible against rock and sand. Marin flexed his fingers. "Let's move." They followed the convoy's rear car at a safe distance until the vehicles reached the old landing zone, a flat plateau beneath a sheer cliff. The engines cut and lights blinked off. Marin signaled to Lee, then guided the Queen through a narrow passage in the plateau's edge. Above, the liaison's voice drifted on open radio. "Set up camp. No disturbances until morning." Marin's heart pounded. They were only meters from the council delegation. If he could reach the liaison, he might speak in person. But the Queen's safety came first. He spotted a small service hatch in the rock wall nearby. "That way," he whispered, pointing. They slipped inside the hatch and into a short tunnel. It opened behind the liaison's command tent. Two sentries stood guard, rifles resting on their knees. Lee crouched beside a crate of supplies. Marin exhaled slowly. "I'll distract them," Lee murmured. She rose and stepped into the tent's dim light. "Who ordered this camp here?" she called out, voice tense. The sentries jolted to attention, rifles lifting. Marin seized the moment. He darted past them and into the command tent's side entrance. The Queen followed like a living shadow. Inside, the liaison and his aides studied holomaps. Marin cleared his throat. "Excuse me, sir," he said, voice calm but firm. "I bring urgent evidence from a trusted source." The liaison glanced up, surprised. "Who are you?" "Corporal Marin Rice, 3rd Platoon," he replied. He tapped the recorder in his hand. "This message contains the Queen of the Iranid plea for aid." The aides gasped as Lee slipped in behind him. The liaison frowned, but curiosity overrode protocol. "Play it." Marin activated the recorder. The Queen's gentle hum filled the small tent, followed by her telepathic words translated into audio, memories of her dying world and her hope for peace. The liaison's stern face softened. He rose and turned to the holomap, then back to Marin. "Prepare a secure channel to Council. I want this forwarded immediately." Marin exhaled with relief as the Queen's dim glow brightened inside the hidden tunnel. In the lantern light of that tent, 2 worlds finally spoke, and the long night of fear began to break toward a new dawn. Corporal Marin Rice waited just outside the liaison's tent as the first rays of dawn painted the sky pale orange. Sergeant Lena Lee stood beside him, eyes on the flap. Inside, the council liaison was sending the Queen's message up to the Grand Council. Every moment felt heavy with hope and fear. After what seemed like an eternity, the flap rustled. The liaison stepped out, face calm but bright. "They've received it," he said. "They approve a temporary ceasefire, and they request to meet your guest in person." Marin's heart leaped. Lee offered him a tight smile. "Let's go," she said. Together, they re-entered the tent. The Queen rose from her spot behind a crate, her glowing lines steady now. She stepped forward into the open, revealing her full height and grace. Lee and Marin stood protectively at her sides. Outside, soldiers paused in their routines. Boots halted on sand, rifles lowered. Word had spread. No one was to fire. The Queen's presence was both strange and wondrous. Some men bowed their heads, others simply stared. The council liaison raised his hand. "By order of the Galactic Council, this camp is under ceasefire. No hostilities until further notice." A murmur ran through the troops. Marin felt the weight of relief in the air. He and Lee guided the Queen toward a small clearing beside the command tent. The liaison followed, flanked by 2 aides. Marin glanced back at Lee. She nodded. This was their moment. Inside the clearing, a makeshift dais waited. A translator device stood atop a crate. The liaison adjusted it and spoke. "Your Majesty," he said into the microphone, "we welcome you." His voice echoed softly across the gathering. The Queen inclined her head, then reached out mentally. The translator buzzed, projecting her telepathic words in gentle tones. "I come in peace and gratitude. Your people saved me when others would have hunted me." At her words, some soldiers wiped their eyes, others straightened with pride. General Corrin stepped forward, arms crossed. His uniform bristled with medals. "Why should we trust you?" he demanded. "Your race brought war to our worlds." The Queen's glowing crest pulsed once. Through the translator, she answered, "I speak for all who survived the ashes. We bear no weapons here. We seek only refuge, dialogue, and a chance to rebuild." Her voice held both sorrow and strength. Marin felt Lee's hand on his arm. Together, they watched as the liaison intervened. "General, the Council has already judged her plea sincere. They grant her temporary asylum under our protection." He turned to the Queen. "And they propose a diplomatic envoy to study rebuilding efforts on Uranus Prime." A tense silence followed. Dust drifted in the early sunlight. Then General Corrin lowered his head and saluted. "So be it," he said. His voice was hard, but respectful. "Corporal Rice, Sergeant Lee, you two will lead the envoy." Marin's breath caught. Lee clasped his shoulder. The Queen's bioluminescent lines brightened in soft gratitude. Around them, soldiers began to relax, some cheering quietly, others simply breathing easier. In that moment, under a calm desert sky, human and alien stood side by side. A fragile tree was born from a single soldier's courage. And though a long road lay ahead, both species dared to hope that compassion could outshine war. The sun had climbed high over the white sands when Corporal Marin Rice and Sergeant Lena Lee stood at the head of the small envoy. Behind them, the alien queen watched with quiet pride. Before them lay the great transport ship that would carry them to Uranus Prime, her shattered homeworld. Marin adjusted his pack and turned to Lee. "Ready?" he asked. She offered a firm nod. He gave one last glance at the Queen. She stepped forward, graceful and dignified in her simple cloak, her 4 arms folded at her chest as she spoke through the translator. "Thank you, brave humans. I go now to guide my people toward new beginnings." A soft cheer arose from the assembled soldiers and scientists boarding the ship. Families of Iranid refugees, rescued from desert camps, waited in tidy rows, clutching small satchels of supplies. Though they had lost much, hope shone in their multifaceted eyes. Marin lifted his rifle, not to fight, but as a gesture of honor. "We will protect you," he said aloud, voice firm. Lee echoed, "We stand with you." The Queen inclined her head, then turned and led her people aboard. As the ramp began to lift, Lee patted Marin's shoulder. "You did it," she said quietly. He allowed himself a small smile. "We all did it." Inside the ship's cargo hold, Iranid children peeked from behind woven baskets. Scientists offered water rations and checked vital signs. Engineers calibrated the engines. Every human on board felt the weight of this mission, rebuilding a world. Outside, the Queen paused at the threshold. She looked back at Marin and Lee, her bioluminescent lines glowing bright enough to see even through the ship's tinted windows. In her final thought, she conveyed one word: gratitude. Marin lifted a hand in farewell. Then the ramp closed with a gentle hiss. The engines roared to life, and the transport lifted from the desert floor. Before long, its silver hull was a gleaming dot against the vast blue sky. Back on the sand, Marin and Lee saluted until the ship vanished beyond the horizon. Their orders came through on Lee's radio: redeploy to forward base, continue patrols. As they turned to leave, they paused by the crystalline seed Marin had planted near the comm tower, a small monument to the unlikely friendship that began in a tent. Lee knelt and brushed away a spray of sand. Beneath, the seed's translucent petals had unfurled into delicate blossoms that glowed faintly in the desert heat. "Looks like your friend left something behind," she said with a grin. Marin watched the flowers shimmer. In their glow, he saw memories of twin suns, crystal forests, and the Queen's gentle strength. He traced a finger along a petal. "She said these would carry her song," he recalled. A reminder of hope. Lee stood and dusted off her knees. "Then let's carry that hope with us," she said. Together, they walked back to their base, the blossom's light guiding their path. Above them, the desert sky stretched endless and bright. Though conflict still raged in distant corners of the galaxy, 2 soldiers knew this truth: that courage, compassion, and a single act of kindness could light the way for many worlds to heal. And in that knowledge lay the promise of a new dawn, for humanity and for the Iranid race.